My husband threw me out of our home, so I got a job as a cleaner at his company just to feed my kids. Every evening, I'd see the young secretary crying in the hallway. One day, as I was cleaning my husband's office, she suddenly put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Hurry, hide under the desk. He's about to have a secret meeting. You need to hear the truth." But the story didn't start there. It started with the dirty water in a plastic bucket. Welcome to Betty's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. Serena Hayes dipped her mop into the gray, soapy mess. The water was hot, but her hands had been freezing for hours. At the Apex Zenith Holdings building, they always skimped on heating in the hallways. Of course, in the corner office of the CEO, her husband, Brandon Sinclair, the thermostat was always set to a perfect 72 degrees Fahrenheit. She wrung out the mop, feeling the rough fabric chafe the calluses on her palms. These hands used to sign contracts for the elite marble that made up these very floors. Now she was washing that marble. She knelt down. Her left knee responded with a dull throb. It was an old injury, a souvenir from a skiing trip to Aspen, Colorado, that they had taken as a family 3 years ago. Back then, Brandon had supported her, carrying her to their room. Now he walked past her as if she were thin air, or even worse, a persistent stain on the carpet that he couldn't quite scrub away. 2 women from accounting walked by. Serena knew them both. She had helped Lisa pick out a gift for the chief accountant's birthday, and she'd helped Maria find a good daycare for her son. Now they fell silent upon seeing her crawling figure and quickened their steps. The click of their heels echoed in the long hallway. Nobody said hello. Serena was used to it. Poverty and falling off the social ladder make a person invisible faster than any magic. Brandon had kicked her out 2 months ago without warning, without explanation. He just left her suitcases outside the door and changed the locks. Her credit cards were blocked, and their joint accounts were empty. "You don't fit my vision," he'd said then, speaking through the threshold without even looking her in the eye. "You drag me down, and I need to fly high." Their children, 8-year-old Jackson and 5-year-old Chloe, stayed with her. She needed to feed them, pay for their small place in Southside Chicago, and buy medicine. She had to swallow her pride that very evening. When she saw the job posting for a janitor at Brandon's firm, she went not because she wanted to see him, but because she knew they paid on time, and also because, deep down, she hoped to understand what had happened. The elevator door opened, and Brandon stepped into the hallway. He wasn't alone. The head of sales hurried beside him, nodding enthusiastically. Brandon walked with a sweeping, proprietary stride. He wore a new, deep, steel-colored suit. Serena knew what it cost. It was an amount that could feed their family for half a year. "And get this trash out of the lobby before the investors arrive," Brandon announced loudly, passing within 3 feet of Serena. He didn't look at her, but she knew he was talking about her. She winced, hunching lower over her bucket, hiding her face behind a curtain of hair. "Of course, Mr. Sinclair," the manager immediately agreed. "The cleaning service is sloppy. The personnel are completely incompetent. They hire just anyone off the street," Brandon added, stopping at his office door. He raised his voice so every word would reach her ears. "No education, no class. All they know is how to push dirt around. That's why I'm getting a divorce. It's impossible to live with someone who has no ambition." The door slammed shut. Serena let out a slow breath. Tears stung her throat, hot and angry, but she wouldn't let them fall. She grabbed the mop and swept it hard across the floor. He wouldn't get the satisfaction. She wouldn't cry. She needed to buy Jackson winter boots. For that, she would endure anything. The workday was ending. The office was emptying. Lights were going out in the cubicles. The human noise faded, giving way to the hum of servers and the drone of ventilation. Serena moved to the final floor, the administrative wing. It was the quietest part. The carpeting muffled her steps. A desk lamp glowed in Brandon's reception area. Yvette Marshall, the young secretary hired only 6 months ago, sat at the desk. Yvette was beautiful, but she looked haunted. Serena often saw her in tears. At first, she thought Yvette was Brandon's mistress, tormented by his demands. But there was no passion in the girl's eyes, only raw fear. Serena entered the reception area with her bucket. Yvette flinched and lifted her head. Her makeup was streaked, her nose was red. "Ms. Hayes," she whispered. She was the only person in the building who continued to use Serena's honorific. "I'm just picking up the trash, Yvette," Serena said quietly, trying not to look at the girl's tear-stained face. "And I need to mop. Has Mr. Sinclair left?" "No." Yvette suddenly jumped up. She looked scared to death. Her hands were shaking. He went out to meet a guest, but he'll be right back." Serena nodded and headed toward the massive oak door of the CEO's office. She needed to finish cleaning and rush home to the children. Her sister Tasha had promised to watch them until 9 o'clock. Time was running out. She pushed open the office door. Inside, it smelled of Brandon's expensive cologne and leather. The huge desk, where they had once discussed company plans together, loomed in the center like a fortress. Serena began wiping dust from the windowsill when she heard quick footsteps behind her. It was Yvette. She rushed into the office and, without a word, grabbed Serena's arm. Her grip was like steel, her fingers digging into Serena's forearm. "Hurry!" Yvette hissed. Her eyes were wide with terror. "Hide under the desk!" "What? Yvette, have you lost your mind? If Brandon sees me here—" "If you don't hide, you won't find out anything," the secretary cut her off. In the hallway, they heard the sound of the elevator doors opening and Brandon's loud, confident laugh. "He's about to have a secret meeting. You need to hear the truth, Ms. Hayes. Please, for God's sake, go." Yvette shoved her toward the desk with unexpected force. There was no time to think. The voices were approaching. Serena, yielding to the girl's panic and a strange, cold premonition, dove under the massive oak desk. It was cramped. It smelled of furniture polish and old dust the mop couldn't reach. Serena pulled her legs to her chest and froze. Yvette darted out of the office a second before the door swung open. Come in, Mr. Vance." Brandon's voice was slick. "Cognac, or should we get right down to business?" "Right down to business, Brandon," replied the other voice. It was raspy, unpleasant. Serena recognized it. It was Ezra, a shady lawyer/fixer that Brandon had dealt with before, though he'd later sworn he'd cut all ties. "I have a plane in 3 hours. Are the documents ready?" Serena clamped her hand over her mouth. Her heart pounded so hard she thought the sound must be audible throughout the room. Brandon's heavy dress shoes strode right past her face. His chair scraped, taking the weight of her husband. "Everything's ready," Brandon said. There was the rustle of paper. "Here's the complete package. Corporate charter, appointment orders, bank powers of attorney." "And the signatures?" the lawyer asked. "The most important part, the CEO's signature." Serena tensed. She expected to hear the name of some mistress, the one for whom he'd destroyed their family. She prepared herself to hear him sign over the house or the condo to his new flame. "You wound me, Ezra." Brandon chuckled. "It's all signed. My dear wife, without even knowing it, worked tirelessly for me. I practiced every night until it was perfect. See for yourself. It's an exact match." A pause. The rustle of pages. "Yes," the lawyer finally drawled. "Flawless work. Serena Hayes. The signature is identical to the one on her passport, and the dates are backdated, just as we agreed, 3 years ago." A chill spread through Serena. Her name. Why was her name involved? "Exactly." Brandon's voice hardened. 3 years ago, Serena Hayes supposedly established a subsidiary company, Triumph Dynamics LLC, supposedly for material procurement. And for all 3 of those years, she, as the sole founder and CEO, has been funneling government funds through that shell company. "The amount?" the lawyer asked briskly. $5 million, Brandon stated clearly. "The money is already in the Cayman Islands, in my accounts, and Triumph Dynamics LLC is facing a debt to the Treasury and a hole in the balance sheet." Serena felt the floor dropping out from beneath her, even though she was already sitting on it. $5 million. That meant prison. Not just debt. This was embezzlement on a massive scale. And she won't be able to talk her way out of it? The lawyer doubted. Say she didn't know that the signature is forged? Forensic analysis? What analysis, Ezra? Brandon laughed, and there was so much contempt in that laugh that Serena felt sick. Look around. What does she do for a living? A janitor? In my own office? So what? So what, you idiot? Brandon slapped the desk right above Serena's head. Her fingerprints are everywhere. On the documents, in the archives, on the safe. I specifically hired her as a janitor so she would leave her prints all over the crime scene. Every day she wipes these cabinets, she touches these files. The investigation will find thousands of her prints. And the motive? A discarded wife, desperately needing money, living in poverty, cleaning toilets. Who would believe she didn't steal the money to get revenge or run away? Serena squeezed her eyes shut. The tears she had held back in the hallway burst out. He hadn't just left her. He had been planning this for months. He hadn't hired her out of pity, or even just to humiliate her. He hired her as a sacrificial lamb. She herself had been polishing the bars of her future prison cell every time she picked up a rag. Brilliant, the lawyer admitted. Cynical, but brilliant. What about the original passport? The copy is in the file. I stole the original from her purse yesterday while she was having lunch in the break room. I'll return it during the search, claiming she was hiding it. Brandon stood up and paced the office. So, we stamped the seal here and here. That's it. Now Serena Hayes is officially a national-scale fraudster. When do we launch the process? Ezra asked. Right now. Serena heard Brandon pull out his phone. Key taps, dial tone. She stopped breathing. Hello, emergency dispatch. Brandon's voice changed instantly. Now it was the voice of a worried, responsible citizen. I want to report suspicious activity. Yes, the address is Park Avenue 145, the offices of Apex Zenith Holdings. He paused, listening to the operator. I saw our janitor, Serena Hayes, messing with the safe that holds our confidential documents. She was acting very strangely, seemed to be trying to take something out. I checked. Corporate documents are missing. Yes, she's still in the building, possibly armed or in a state of distress. Send someone immediately. Brandon ended the call. In the silence of the office, his voice sounded like a death sentence. They said a squad will be here in 10 minutes. Well, Ezra, take the service exit and I'll wait for the show. Serena looked at her hands. They were shaking. 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, people with guns would storm in here. She didn't have $5 million. She only had a bucket of dirty water and a fake CEO title that would send her to prison for 10 years. Her children would be left alone, or even worse, with him. She looked at her husband's expensive leather shoes, standing only a foot away from her face. He was standing, whistling a cheerful tune, waiting for the police. Time was ticking. Brandon stepped toward the window. Serena only saw his back, draped in the expensive fabric of his jacket, and heard the clink of glass. He was pouring himself water, or perhaps cognac, to celebrate his victory. 10 minutes. She now had 9 or maybe 8. She didn't wait for him to turn around. The fear that had paralyzed her under the desk suddenly transformed into a cold, calculating energy. Serena knew this office better than Brandon did. 3 years ago, when the firm first moved into the building, she had personally supervised the renovations. Brandon had waved away the blueprints, saying, "Just make it look good, I don't have time for nonsense." And she had. She knew every inch of wiring, every hidden space. She knew about the utility door behind the decorative mahogany panel to the right of the awards shelving. Serena silently, like a cat, slipped out from under the desk. Her knees, scraped against the stiff carpet, were burning, but she felt no pain. Brandon was by the window, looking down at the parking lot, scouting for flashing lights. He was whistling a tune that sounded like a funeral march to Serena. She took a step. The parquet didn't creak. She had personally chosen the highest quality subfloor. Another step. Her hand touched the cold panel. Her fingers found the hidden mechanism, a small indentation invisible to the eye. A press. The click was quiet, but in the silence of the office, it sounded like a gunshot. Brandon spun around suddenly. Serena had already slipped into the dark doorway, pulling the narrow door shut behind her. "Who's there?" The sound came from the office, muffled as if through cotton. She pressed her back against the reverse side of the panel, clamping her hand over her mouth. Her heart was beating somewhere in her throat, making it hard to breathe. She heard Brandon walk up to the shelving unit. He yanked one of the books, checked the safe. He didn't know about the door. He thought the sound was caused by something falling or a draft. "Must have imagined it," he muttered, barely a foot away from her. "Nerves, where are those damned cops?" Serena exhaled through her nose. She was in the utility corridor, a narrow passage between the walls designed for cable runs and access to ventilation shafts. It smelled of dust, dry plaster, and mouse droppings. There was no light, only faint beams piercing through the ventilation grills above. She knew where to go. This corridor led to the fire escape, which only the electricians and system administrators used. The elevators were a trap now. If the police had already entered the building, they would block the elevator lobby first. She needed to go down, to the basement, to the archives. Yvette's words echoed in her ears. "You need to hear the truth." But the truth alone wasn't enough. She needed proof. Brandon had told the lawyer the documents were in the archives in the Triumph Dynamics LLC folder. If she ran now empty-handed, she would be a fugitive with no chance of justification. She needed that file. Serena moved by touch, holding her hands out. Cobwebs stuck to her face, catching in her hair. Her janitorial uniform, synthetic and uncomfortable, snagged on protruding wires. She stumbled over a toolbox forgotten by one of the workers and barely stifled a scream, biting her lip until it bled. Ahead, a blurry rectangle of light appeared, the exit to the stairwell. Serena eased the door open. Empty. Concrete steps descended into the darkness. Far away, she heard the first wail of a siren. It grew louder, approaching like a predator smelling blood. Serena ran. She leaped over steps, grabbing the dirty railing. Third floor, second, first. On the first floor, she froze. Voices were audible behind the heavy metal door. "Everyone stay put! Federal agents are taking over!" They were already here. They had stormed the lobby. Now they would head up to Brandon's office, find him alone and shocked by the theft, and begin sweeping the building. Serena sprinted lower to the sublevel, the basement. It was much colder here. The air was damp and heavy. Water squelched beneath her feet. Apparently a pipe had burst somewhere, and no one had been in a hurry to fix it. Now, those were the problems of CEO Serena Hayes, not the actual owner. The archives were at the end of the long corridor. The door was unlocked. The lock had been broken a month ago, and Serena, who cleaned here in the mornings, knew it. She flew inside and flipped the light switch. The fluorescent lamp flickered, reluctantly illuminating the room with a deadly pale light. Shelving units. Endless rows of gray metal shelves crammed with files. "God help me," she whispered. She rushed to the section labeled with a T. Trinity, Titan, Triumph. There it was. Triumph Dynamics LLC, a thick file bulging with papers made of heavy cardstock. Serena snatched it. Her hands were shaking so hard she nearly dropped the documents. She opened the file at random. The very first sheet. The order appointing the CEO and a signature. Her signature. A perfect copy. If she hadn't known she hadn't signed it, she would have believed it herself. She pressed the file to her chest. "Now run. Hold it! Freeze!" The voice hit her back. Serena froze, feeling the cold seep under her skin. She slowly turned around. Mr. Leon, the night watchman, stood in the archive doorway. In his hands, he held a powerful flashlight, its beam aimed right at her eyes, and a rubber baton. Mr. Leon had worked here under the old owner before Brandon bought the building. He remembered Serena when she was pregnant with Jackson. He remembered her bringing him homemade apple turnovers when she stayed late. "Ms. Hayes?" Mr. Leon lowered the flashlight. His face, etched with wrinkles, registered extreme confusion. "What are you doing here?" "The police. They're looking for you. Mr. Sinclair said over the radio that you stole money." "Mr. Leon?" Serena's voice broke into a rasp. She took a step toward him, pressing the file to her chest like a shield. "Do you believe that? You've known me for 10 years. You saw me cleaning these floors for 2 months. Do you think I'm a thief?" The old man was silent. He shifted his weight. His eyes darted between the file in her hands and the corridor, where the sound of heavy boots was approaching. "He said you were dangerous," the guard said uncertainly. "He said to detain you at all costs." "He set me up," Serena spoke quickly, feeling tears welling up again. "He signed a company over to me, saddled me with debt so he could escape himself. If they grab me now, I'll never see my children again. Jackson, Chloe, you remember Chloe, Mr. Leon? She gave you a drawing for Christmas." The guard's face twitched. He remembered. Of course, he remembered the funny bunny drawn by a child's hand that still hung in his booth above the monitors. From upstairs, a coarse shout echoed down the stairwell. "Check the basement! Move!" Mr. Leon flinched. He looked at Serena, then at the stairs. A struggle was going on in his eyes. Duty, fear of losing his job, fear of his boss, versus conscience. "Run," he breathed, suddenly stepping aside and freeing the passage. "Thank you." Serena lunged for the exit, but he caught her sleeve. "Wait. You'll freeze to death in that uniform. It's -4 degrees out there, mister." Leon tore his old, oversized coat from a hanger by the entrance to the archive, massive, smelling of tobacco and wool, with a worn collar. He threw it over Serena's shoulders. The coat was heavy, like armor, and reached almost to her ankles. "The loading dock," he whispered quickly, pushing her in the back. "The gate is open. They finished taking out the trash a half hour ago. Go through the warehouses, then over the fence into the vacant lot, and don't look back." "I'll hold them up. I'll say I saw you run to the roof." "I will never forget this," Serena whispered. "Go, daughter. Go for your babies." She ran. The coat tangled around her feet. The file thudded against her ribs, but she ran faster than she ever had in her life. Corridor, turn, the smell of gasoline and exhaust fumes. The loading area. The huge gates were slightly ajar, leaving a gap of about 18 inches. Serena squeezed through the gap and tumbled out into the night. The biting winter wind hit her lungs, scorching her throat. Snow crunched under the thin soles of her uniform shoes. She was in the back lot, amidst trash containers and old pallets. The Apex Zenith Holdings building was blazing with light, like the Titanic. Sirens screamed at the main entrance. Red and blue flashes danced on the snow, reflecting in the dark windows. Serena heard shouting and the slamming of car doors. She saw people in helmets and bulletproof vests rushing into the lobby. They were looking for her. She dove into the darkness of the alley, pressing herself against the brick wall. She needed to get far away, to disappear into the labyrinth of the residential district before they blocked off the area. In the coat pocket, her cell phone vibrated. Serena gasped. She had forgotten to turn it off. God, what if they tracked the signal? She pulled the device out with shaking fingers, ready to remove the SIM card and throw it into a snowbank. The screen glowed in the darkness. One notification from the bank. She froze. Who could be sending her money now? Child support? Brandon never paid on time. She unlocked the screen. The green logo of the banking app. A message. Funds received. Amount, $5 million. Sender, Sinclair B. Designation, loan repayment per contract number, 1423. Serena stared at the figures and they blurred before her eyes. 5 million. The world swayed. She leaned her back against the icy wall to keep from falling. This wasn't a bailout. This was the final nail in her coffin. Brandon hadn't just stolen government money. He had transferred part of it to her. Now, when the police checked her accounts, and they would do that first, they would see those millions. $5 million, deposited into the account of a poor janitor 10 minutes before she fled with the documents. It was the perfect trap. Now she had motive, means, and evidence of her guilt. To the entire world, she had just become a rich thief who had run off with the haul, and no one, no investigator, would believe she had nothing to do with it. Serena gripped the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. In the distance, the siren wailed again. Now that wail was aimed at her. Serena stuffed the phone back into the pocket as if it were a venomous snake and ran. Her feet slipped on the icy crust covering the asphalt. Mr. Leon's enormous coat flapped around her calves, hindering her movement, but she couldn't take it off. Underneath, she had only her thin janitor's uniform, and the cold was so severe the air felt solid. She couldn't run to the subway. There were cameras, there would be police. She couldn't call a taxi through an app. That would leave a digital trace. She burst onto a busy avenue where cars streamed by, kicking up plumes of snowy dust. Serena raised her hand. One car sped past, splashing her with dirty slush. A second didn't even slow down. The third, a beat-up sedan with tinted windows, veered sharply to the curb. "Where to?" asked the driver, a young man, barely lowering the window. "Gold Coast, the old limestone houses," Serena gasped, her teeth chattering. "Cash payment, $100. Just hurry." The guy sized up her strange attire, the huge man's coat on her small shoulders, her disheveled hair, her frantic eyes. But $100 for a 15-minute drive did the trick. "Get in." Serena collapsed into the back seat. The car peeled away. She pressed herself into the corner, trying to be invisible. Only one thought hammered in her head: Vivian Sinclair, Brandon's mother, the Iron Lady, the woman who always held her back straight, even when she buried her husband. She had never particularly liked Serena, considering her too common for her genius son, but she idolized her grandchildren. Jackson and Chloe were the light of her life. Vivian Sinclair was an old-school person for whom family honor meant more than money. If she found out what Brandon had done, that he'd framed the mother of his children for a federal crime, that he'd embezzled government money, she would crush him. She was the only person in this city Brandon truly feared. The car snaked through the snowy streets. Serena clutched the file of documents to her chest under the coat. It was her ticket to salvation, but right now, that file was burning her skin. "We're here," the driver mumbled, braking in front of the tall, wrought-iron gates of a historic mansion from the 1950s. Serena, with trembling hands, dug the crumpled bills from the coat pocket, everything she had on her for lunch money, and shoved them at the driver. She scrambled out of the car and ran to the entrance. The doorman, dozing behind the glass, initially didn't want to let the strange woman in rags pass, but upon recognizing Mrs. Sinclair's daughter-in-law, he fearfully pressed the door release button. The elevator, smelling of mahogany and lacquer, climbed agonizingly slowly. 5th floor. Serena pressed the bell. A melodic chime sounded behind the massive door. Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy, measured. The lock clicked. The door opened. Vivian Sinclair stood on the threshold. She was in a severe house dress, her gray hair perfectly styled. Despite the late hour, an expression of disgusted perplexity was frozen on her face. "Serena." Her voice was cold, like metal. "What is this farce? Why are you wearing that junk? And why at this hour?" "Vivian." Serena practically stumbled into the hallway, nearly falling onto the polished parquet. "Help me, Brandon." The mother-in-law stepped back, letting her in, and quickly shut the door, as if afraid a draft might bring street grime into her immaculate apartment. "What is it, Brandon? Are you drunk?" Vivian frowned, sniffing the air. "No." Serena grabbed her arm. Her mother-in-law's hand was dry and hard. "Brandon has gone crazy. He set me up. He wants to put me in prison." Vivian froze. Her face, which resembled a stone mask, wavered. "Go into the living room," she commanded. "Take that monstrosity off your shoulders and tell me, clearly." In the enormous living room, furnished with antiques, a grandfather clock ticked. That tick-tock, tick-tock had always depressed Serena, but now it seemed like the only island of stability in a collapsing world. Serena, still trembling, sat on the edge of the velvet sofa. She told the story, stammering and swallowing her words, about the janitor job, the secret meeting, the fake signatures, the call to the police. Vivian listened in silence, standing by the window and looking out at the night city. She didn't interrupt, Only her right hand nervously fiddled with the pearl necklace around her neck. "And look here." Serena pulled out the phone. "I ran away, and he sent me money. 5 million right now, so the police will think I was in on it, that I took my cut and fled." She handed the phone to her mother-in-law. Viviane took the device, put on her gold-rimmed glasses, and stared at the screen for a long time. 5 million, she muttered. Idiotic. "What is idiotic? He wants to take the children, Viviane," Serena whispered, and the tears finally broke through. "If they lock me up, he'll take them away or dump them in a boarding school. He never spent time with them. Jackson, Chloe, what will happen to them?" The mother-in-law slowly placed the phone on the coffee table beside a porcelain vase. She turned to Serena. In her eyes, usually sharp and stern, there was something like sympathy or fatigue. "Calm down," she said firmly. "No one is going to prison. Brandon has gone too far. Power has gone to his head. He's lost all sense of boundaries, but to involve the mother of his children in his schemes, that's low, even for him." Serena let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging. She knew this woman wouldn't allow the family to be destroyed completely. "I'll make some peppermint tea right now," Viviane said. "You need to warm up. You're completely blue, and I'll call my lawyer. I have contacts in the district attorney's office. We'll sort out this transfer by morning. The main thing is not to panic." "Thank you," Serena whispered. "Thank you. I didn't know where else to go." "You did the right thing coming to me. Family problems should be solved inside the home, not on the street. Go to the guest room. There's a blanket on the sofa. Lie down. I'll bring the tea there." Serena nodded and, on shaky legs, walked into the adjoining room. It was a library converted into a guest room. The walls were lined with bookshelves up to the ceiling. It smelled of old paper and lavender. She sank onto the leather sofa and covered herself with the blanket. Warmth slowly began to return to her body, and with it, a crushing exhaustion set in. The adrenaline was receding, leaving emptiness behind. She was safe. Viviane would call the prosecutor. They would prove the transfer was a trap. She had the documents. The file was in the hallway, in the pocket of the oversized coat. No, she should have grabbed the file. Serena tried to stand up, but her strength failed her. "I'll just rest for a minute," she thought. "Just 1 minute." Her gaze wandered around the room, catching on the spines of books, the heavy drapes, the framed photographs arranged on the mantelpiece. Here was Brandon at graduation. Here was their wedding. Brandon was smiling, but he was looking at the camera, not his bride. Here were the grandchildren in the park. Serena's eyes stopped on a photograph in the corner of the shelf. The picture was recent, color, in an expensive silver frame. Some kind of banquet. Viviane Sinclair, in an evening gown, held a glass of champagne. She was smiling, a rarity for her. Standing next to her was a man, short, balding, with a cunning, rat-like face. He held her arm, like an old friend. Serena blinked. Sleepiness vanished. She had seen that face an hour ago in her husband's office. It was the lawyer, Ezra Vance, the same man who had forged the documents, the same man who had laughed about how cleverly they had framed the janitor. But why was he in a photo with Viviane Sinclair, and why did they look so close? Fragments of a conversation from 3 years ago flashed into her memory. Brandon had complained he couldn't find a sharp enough lawyer for his schemes, and Viviane had said, "I have someone, vetted. He helped your father with delicate issues, too." A cold much more terrifying than the outdoor freeze gripped Serena's heart. Brandon hadn't found the lawyer. Viviane had brought him in. She didn't just know, she was involved. 5 million, Serena whispered, remembering the amount. Brandon couldn't have pulled this off alone. He was greedy, but not smart enough for such a complex, 3-year-long maneuver. He needed an architect, someone who knew how to wait and plan. Serena slowly, trying not to creak the sofa springs, got up. She had to run, immediately. The tea her mother-in-law was preparing might be the last thing she ever drank. She tiptoed to the door leading to the living room. The door was cracked open a few centimeters. Viviane's voice drifted from the living room. She was speaking quietly, but in the apartment's silence, every word dropped like a stone. "Yes, Ezra, I know it's risky, but this is even better." Serena held her breath. "No, I didn't call the lawyer. Why would I?" Vivian's voice became irritated. "I'm calling Brandon, but his line is busy." "Ah, here's the second line. Wait." A click, switching calls. "Brandon!" Vivian's voice changed, becoming authoritative and harsh. "Stop being hysterical. Shut up and listen to me. Is she here?" "Yes. She's with me." A pause. Serena pressed her ear to the door jamb, feeling her pulse pound in her temples. She came herself. Imagine that. The idiot decided to cry to Mommy. She brought the phone, showed me the transfer. "Brandon, listen closely. Don't call the police here yet. Just come yourself. Quickly." She brought the phone with the banking app. "We need access to confirm the funds with the SMS code and immediately transfer them to a transit account, or the bank will flag the operation as suspicious." Serena covered her mouth to keep from screaming. "Yes, she's in the guest room, waiting for tea," Vivian continued, and a sound of icy mockery entered her voice. "She thinks I'm saving the grandchildren. Come and take her, and take the phone. Then you can call the police and say you detained her while she was trying to escape. That's it. I'm waiting. The door code. You know it." The mother-in-law hung up. There was the clinking of porcelain. She was still preparing tea. Serena backed away from the door. She was trapped. 5th floor. The only exit was through the living room where Vivian Sinclair stood, and Brandon was already rushing to the house to finish what he started. She looked at the library window. Outside, the wind howled. The balcony. There was a balcony. Her gaze fell on the side table where she had left her phone. No, the phone was in the living room with Vivian. Vivian had deliberately taken it. No phone, no money, cornered in the apartment of her main enemy. Serena heard Vivian's footsteps approaching the library door. "Serena, darling, the tea is ready." The voice cooed outside the door, sweet and deadly. The doorknob began to turn. Serena clicked the door lock, cutting herself off from the living room and her mother-in-law. The knob immediately rattled. "Serena!" Vivian's voice outside the door lost all its sweetness. Now, it was a steel threat. "Don't be stupid. Open up right now. Brandon is already coming up." Serena didn't answer. She bolted for the balcony door. The old wooden frames, sealed for winter with paper strips, didn't yield immediately. She yanked the latch, tearing her nails, and slammed her shoulder against it. The door flew open, letting in a cloud of icy vapor. Downstairs in the courtyard, tires screeched. Serena peered over the railing. Brandon's familiar black SUV was parked right at the entrance, blocking the road. A car door slammed. Brandon leaped out into the snow, not even bothering with a coat, and ran toward the front door. He was in a hurry. He was coming for her. "Open up!" The slam against the library door was so violent that plaster dusted down. "I'm calling security." Serena leaned over the railing. 5th floor. Below was concrete and ice, but to the right, within arm's reach, was the fire escape. A rusty old structure welded to the side of the building half a century ago. She just had to reach it. She climbed onto the icy railing. The heavy coat dragged her down, impeding her movement. The wind slapped her face, stinging her eyes. Serena didn't look down. She looked only at the rusty crossbar. A leap. Her fingers slipped on the metal, scraping her skin, but she held on. Her legs dangled in the void. She pulled herself up, grunting with effort, and hooked the toe of her shoe onto a rung. At that moment, the library door burst open with a crash. Serena heard Brandon's voice. "Where is she? Mom, where is that?" "On the balcony!" Vivian shrieked. Serena didn't wait. She slid down the ladder, tearing up her palms on the icy metal. 4th floor, 3rd. At the 2nd floor level, the ladder ended. There were about 10 feet to the ground. Beneath her was a snowdrift, but under the snow could be ice, trash, or rebar. From the 5th floor balcony, Brandon's head appeared. "There she is! Stop! Stop!" Serena let go. The impact was hard. She sank into the snow up to her waist, hit her knee on something solid, but immediately scrambled up. The pain would come later. Now there was only animal terror. She tore away from the courtyard, not toward her car, where she could be intercepted, but through the narrow passage between the garages into the darkness of the next block. She ran until her lungs burned, stopping in some unfamiliar courtyard, leaning against the wall of a utility shed. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it would break her ribs. She was alone. No phone, no money, no documents. The file remained in the coat, but the coat was now the only thing keeping her warm that night. She had no proof. She had no allies. Or did she? Yvette, the secretary, the one who shoved her under the desk, the one who said, "You need to hear the truth." Serena knew where she lived. 6 months ago, when Yvette was sick, Brandon had sent Serena to drop off medicine and work documents. "That's too low class, driving through the rough parts," he'd said then. "You go." The address was seared into her memory. It wasn't far, in the industrial district, about a 20-minute walk. Serena trudged through the snowy streets. The wind pierced her bones, even through the heavy coat. The city slept, indifferent to her plight. Sparse streetlights illuminated her path. When she reached the right building, her toes had already lost sensation. The intercom wasn't working. The entrance door was propped open with a brick. Serena climbed to the second floor. The door to apartment 12 was unlocked. Noise and the sound of crashing objects came from inside. Serena pushed the door open and entered. Chaos reigned in the narrow hallway. Hangers, shoes, and makeup littered the floor. Yvette, disheveled, with red blotches on her face, was trying to zip up an enormous suitcase. Seeing Serena in the gigantic coat, with crazy eyes and a scrape on her cheek, she shrieked and dropped a bag of documents. "Don't come closer! I don't know anything! Get out!" Yvette backed into the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the counter. "You knew?" Serena asked hoarsely. She closed the front door behind her and leaned her back against it, sliding to the floor. She had no strength left to stand. "You knew about the signatures, you knew about the setup, and you stayed silent." "I tried to tell you!" Yvette screamed. Hysteria broke through her fear. "Today in the office you shoved me under the desk so I would go to prison instead of you. Why didn't you go to the police earlier? Why did you let him do it? Were you sleeping with him? Did you need his money?" Serena's rage surged. "Money?" Yvette laughed, and the sound was chilling. She slammed the knife onto the table and ripped open the neck of her blouse. Her entire neck and collarbone were covered in bruises. "Look, is this money or is this love?" Serena froze. "He's a monster." "Ms. Hayes." Yvette covered her face with her hands and sobbed. "He's not a lover. He's an owner. 6 months ago, at the office party, he slipped something into my drink. I woke up in a hotel room, and he was standing there with a camera. He filmed everything. Then he said, 'Want to be an internet star? Want your parents back home to see this video? Your fiancé? Then work. Do what I tell you. Sign what I give you.'" Serena approached the girl. The anger was gone, replaced by cold understanding. Brandon wasn't just a thief. He was a spider, weaving his web around everyone. "He blackmailed you," Serena said quietly. "He said if I peeped, he would destroy my life," Yvette choked out. "And today, when he called the police on you, I realized I was next. As soon as he flies to the Cayman Islands, he'll leak the video just for fun. That's why I'm leaving for the train station now." "You're not leaving." Serena grabbed her shoulders and shook her. "You think he'll let you go? He has eyes everywhere. At the train station, at the airport. They'll pull you off the train in an hour, and if you run away, he'll post the video instantly." "What am I supposed to do?" Yvette lifted eyes full of terror. "Die?" "No, destroy him." Yvette gave a bitter smile. "How? He has money, connections, a witch for a mother. And what do we have? You don't even have a passport." "We have something he isn't expecting. We know his secrets." Serena squeezed the girl's shoulders. "Yvette, where are the real documents? Not the fake ones he gave me. Where is the real accounting? Where are the records of where the $5 million really went? He couldn't keep everything in his head. He's a stickler for detail. He records every penny." Yvette paused for a second, wiping her tears with her sleeve. "The Black Book," she whispered. "That's what he calls it, a thick, leather-bound daily planner. He never leaves it at the office, and he doesn't take it home. He's afraid of his mother." "Where does he keep it? Think." "The gym." Yvette's eyes widened. "The Elite Titan Club. He goes there every Thursday morning. He has a personal locker in the VIP changing room. He thinks it's the safest place. He checked the records there once while I was waiting for him in the lobby." "The locker," Serena repeated. "We need to go there now." "But the club is closed." "No, they have 24-hour access for VIP clients. I have his card." Brandon himself had given it to her so she could get fit for him. Yvette rushed to the dresser and turned her purse inside out. A gold-colored plastic card fell onto the floor. "Let's go," Serena said, picking up the card. "Is your car running?" 10 minutes later, they were speeding through the night city in Yvette's beat-up sedan. The streets were empty. Serena sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in the coat. She was shaking not from the cold, but from tension. If that planner contained records of the real transfers, the bribes, the forged signatures, it was the end for Brandon. It meant prison for him and freedom for her. The Titan Club greeted them with a neon sign in silence. Only a couple of cars were in the parking lot. "Act natural," Serena whispered as they approached the glass doors. "You're the client. I'm with you." The sleepy administrator barely lifted his head when Yvette scanned the card at the turnstile. Serena slipped in after her, trying not to rustle her enormous coat. "The men's changing room is that way." Yvette pointed to an oak door. "There shouldn't be anyone there now. It's 3 o'clock in the morning." They entered. The air smelled of chlorine, expensive shower gel, and men's sweat. Rows of dark wood lockers. "What number?" Serena asked. 42. It's his favorite number." They found the locker at the very end of the row. The electronic lock blinked red. "The code." Serena looked at Yvette. I don't know." Yvette panicked. "He entered it himself. Think, birth date, card pin, wedding anniversary." "No, he's too paranoid for simple dates." Yvette bit her lip. "Wait. He once bragged that the code was the weight he dreams of bench pressing. 350 pounds. Serena entered 350. Error. "No, not that." Yvette trembled. "Maybe his mother's birth date?" "Try it." Yvette entered the digits. Error. The lock emitted an unpleasant beep. One more attempt, and it would lock them out. "Think, Yvette. What does he love most in the world?" "Himself. Money." Yvette froze. "Money. The amount he stole. 5 million. The girl's trembling finger pressed 500. Click. Green light. Serena breathed a sigh of relief and yanked the door open. It was empty inside. No gym bag, no towel, no sneakers, and no daily planner. The locker was bare, except for a small white piece of paper taped to the back wall. Serena reached out. Her fingers were numb. She peeled off the note. Brandon's handwriting, sweeping, confident, with sharp angles. She brought the paper to her eyes. The letters swam. "Did you really think I'd be that careless, darling? Say goodbye to the kids." "What is it?" Yvette whispered behind her. Serena didn't answer. The paper fell from her hands and fluttered to the tiled floor. The world around her shrank to the size of that note. He knew. He knew she would come here. He had calculated their every move. While she was running in the cold, while she was looking for Yvette, while they were driving here, he was laughing. And now he was going for the children. Jackson? Chloe? Say goodbye to the kids. Serena spun around and ran toward the exit, her feet barely touching the ground. Forget the planner. Forget prison. Only one thing mattered now. To get there. To get there before he did. "Drive!" Serena screamed, clutching the dashboard so hard the plastic creaked under her fingers. Yvette, white as a sheet, floored the gas pedal. The old sedan roared, blowing through a red light. They swerved side to side on the slippery road, but Serena felt no fear of an accident. The fear was different, cloying and cold. It twisted her insides into a tight knot. Serena's sister Tasha lived in a quiet residential neighborhood in a block surrounded by old trees. It was usually dark and calm here, but when Yvette's car screamed into the courtyard, Serena knew she was too late. The courtyard was flooded with the anxious, pulsing light of flashing sirens. 2 police cars and a white minivan with Child Protective Services emblazoned on the side blocked the driveway. Neighbors huddled near the entrance, wrapped in robes and jackets, craning their necks to get a better look at someone else's misery. "Stop here!" Serena barked from behind a utility shed. "Don't drive any closer!" Yvette slammed on the brakes, and the car slid into a snowbank. Serena leaped out, forgetting to close the door. She wanted to rush to the entrance, push past the police, and snatch her children. But the same instinct for self-preservation that had made her hide in the ventilation shaft suddenly slammed on the brakes. She saw Brandon. He stood by the open front door, tall, confident, his coat unbuttoned. Beside him, 2 police officers with weapons shifted their weight, and in front of them, standing on the snow, was Tasha, Serena's sister. She was wearing only a nightgown, with a jacket hastily thrown over it. She was sobbing, grabbing an officer's sleeve. "You have no right!" Tasha cried, her voice rising to a shriek. "She's a good mother. This is a mistake. Where is your warrant?" "Ma'am, step aside, or we will use force," the officer replied curtly, pushing her away with his hand. A heavy-set woman in a severe gray coat emerged from the building. She held a file. Behind her, 2 burly men in uniform were escorting the children out. Jackson walked on his own, head down, fists clenched. He was pale, his lips trembling, but he tried not to cry. Little Chloe, in her favorite pink hat with a pom-pom, was being carried by the second man and screaming hysterically. "Mommy! Mommy!" Her cry cut through the night air like a knife. "I don't want to! Let me go, Aunt Tasha!" Serena took a step forward, emerging from the shed's shadow. Her body lunged toward her daughter, but her mind whipped her back. "Take one more step and you'll be arrested. They'll cuff you, throw you in the police car, and then you truly will never see them again. You have no rights. You have no money. You are a wanted felon." She fell to her knees in the dirty snow behind the corner of the building, clamping her hands over her mouth to stop herself from crying out. Her teeth bit into her palm until it bled. She watched as her life, her purpose, her very breath, was loaded into a vehicle. Brandon walked up to Chloe. He didn't hug her. He didn't comfort her. He fastidiously dusted off her jacket as the officer placed the girl on the ground in front of the car. "Stop screaming," he said loudly, and in the silence of the courtyard, his voice sounded like a whip crack. "Your mother is a crazy thief. Be grateful your father is taking care of you. Get in the car," the woman from Child Protective Services commanded. The children were shoved into the back seat of Brandon's huge black SUV. The doors slammed shut, cutting off their cries. Brandon got behind the wheel. The woman from CPS sat next to him. The convoy moved out. Serena watched them until the red taillights disappeared into the night. The neighbors began to disperse, discussing the scandal. Tasha remained sitting on the steps, covering her face with her hands. "Ms. Hayes!" Yvette approached from behind, silently, like a shadow. She was crying too. "What are we going to do?" Serena slowly stood up. The snow on the knees of the coat was soaked through and dark. She wiped the blood from her bitten palm onto the coat's wool. Something inside her died at that moment. The Serena who was afraid, who hoped for her mother-in-law, who cried in the break room, vanished. All that remained was emptiness and cold, calculating hatred. "Take me to the industrial zone," she said. Her voice was foreign, hoarse, like sandpaper. "Why?" Yvette was scared. "That place is full of gang members and guard dogs. The office of Marvin Coleman." Yvette gasped. Coleman, Brandon's enemy, the man Brandon had double-crossed 5 years ago. "Ms. Hayes, he'll kill you. He hates anyone with the name Sinclair." "I have no choice." Serena walked toward the car, not glancing back at her sister's window. Tasha couldn't be seen right now. She was certainly being watched. If he wants to destroy Brandon, he'll listen to me. And if not, then I have nothing left to lose. The drive took 40 minutes. They drove in silence. Yvette sobbed occasionally, but Serena stared at a single point on the windshield. The defunct mechanical plant met them with rusty gates and the barking of guard dogs. But behind the peeling facade of the administrative building lay another world. Marvin Coleman, Brandon's former partner and now the owner of a shadowy scrap metal business, had established his fortress here. Serena got out of the car. "Go, Yvette," she said. "Hide. Turn off your phone. If I don't come out in an hour, it means they've turned me over to the police. I'll wait around the corner." The secretary stubbornly shook her head. Serena approached the steel door with a video camera lens, pressed the buzzer. Silence. Then the speaker crackled. "Who the hell is it? Get lost before I let the dogs out." "It's Serena Hayes," she said loudly and clearly. "Brandon's wife." The pause lasted an eternity. Serena felt the camera scanning her face, her absurd coat, her despair. The lock clicked. The heavy door slowly opened. A massive guy in a black t-shirt stood on the threshold. He silently nodded her inside. Marvin Coleman sat in a huge leather armchair in an office that looked more like a bunker. The walls were unfinished brick. The air smelled of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey. Marvin himself was a heavy-set man in his 40s with a hard gaze and a scar above his eyebrow. He didn't stand when Serena entered. He didn't even take his feet off the table. He slowly took a sip from his glass, examining her like a strange insect. "Well, I'll be," he drawled mockingly. "Duchess Hayes in a janitor's coat. Look what life does to you. Did you come here begging for charity? Or did your little husband send you to spy?" "Brandon threw me out," Serena said, not dropping her gaze. "He framed me for $5 million, and he took my children." Marvin laughed, a loud barking sound. "And you came to me to cry about it? Get out!" He abruptly stopped laughing, and his face became terrifying. "Get out! Your husband ruined me. He stole my business, and you spent all those years going to parties, smiling, living on my money that he stole. You're part of the rot. Get out before I call the cops. I'll turn you in. Maybe they'll even give me a reward." Serena didn't move. "He stole more than just your business, Marvin," she said quietly. "You think he just cheated you on construction contracts? That's small time." Coleman narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" "In 2018, when you were still partners, Brandon opened 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands in his mother's name. He was draining money from your joint contracts into those, the very money you needed to cover your loans. He didn't just win the company from you. He robbed you from the inside while shaking your hand." Marvin slowly lowered his feet from the table. Silence hung in the office. "Proof," he growled. "I don't have the papers with me," Serena replied. "But I know the names of the shell companies and the account numbers. I saw them in his archive today before I ran away. Olympus Trading, Northern Stream Limited." Marvin's eyes widened. He knew those names. He had apparently been looking for them for years but couldn't connect them to Brandon. "Viviane," he spat. "The old witch." He grabbed a bottle of whiskey and threw it against the wall. Glass shattered. He was breathing heavily, looking at Serena now, not with contempt, but with something resembling respect, or at least business interest. "What do you want?" he asked. "To destroy him," Serena said. "I need my children, and you need revenge and your money. Help me get the proof, and I'll give you everything that's left of his empire." Marvin walked over to the computer. He quickly typed something on the keyboard, looking at the monitor. His face, illuminated by the screen, darkened. "I'll help you, Hayes," he said hoarsely, "but we have a problem." "What?" "He moved the money." "I don't care about the money." Marvin turned the monitor toward her. An email was open on the screen, some kind of booking confirmation. "I have my people at the airport and in travel agencies," Marvin explained. "I track all your husband's movements. Look here." Serena moved closer. The letters blurred before her eyes, but the meaning hit her instantly, punching her gut harder than any fist. They were airline tickets. 3 tickets. Brandon Sinclair, Jackson Sinclair, Chloe Sinclair. Departure in 48 hours. Route, Chicago, New York, Zurich. Switzerland, Serena whispered. Are they going on vacation? No, Marvin shook his head. Look at the visa type and the return tickets. There are no return tickets. And here's the contract with the private boarding school, Le Mans Academy, in the Swiss Alps, a closed facility for children whose parents don't want them found. He looked at Serena with a heavy gaze. He's not going to raise them himself, Serena. He's putting them in a home for rich orphans. He's taking them away forever. We don't have time for long plans. In 2 days, they'll fly out of the country, and you'll never see them again. Swiss law is unbreakable in these matters. Serena felt the floor dropping out from under her. 48 hours. What do we do? She asked, and steel entered her voice. We fight, Marvin replied, pulling a handgun from a desk drawer and placing it in front of him. But we fight smart. We're going into the belly of the beast. Marvin placed a small black disc, no bigger than a button, on the table. It's a microphone with a transmitter, he said, looking Serena directly in the eye. It operates on a frequency that the room's jammers can't touch. The charge will last for 2 hours. You have to slip it into his pocket. In his jacket, his pants, it doesn't matter. The main thing is that he has it on him when he gets drunk and starts talking. Serena took the device with trembling fingers. It was cold and weightless. What if he recognizes me? She asked, adjusting the tight collar of her white shirt. He won't. To people like Brandon, the help aren't people. They're furniture that brings them food. You're a waitress now. Look at the floor, he said softly. Don't stand out. An hour later, she was standing at the service entrance of the grand ballroom. Marvin had arranged things with his contact in the catering service. Serena was wearing black slacks, a white shirt, and a long black apron that concealed her figure. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun. She wore a medical mask over her face. Thanks to the latest flu scare, no one was surprised. Music was blasting in the hall. It was the Founders' Ball, the annual Vanity Fair where the city's elite celebrated their successes. Enormous chandeliers bathed the space in golden light, reflecting off the ladies' diamonds and the gentlemen's cufflinks. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, hairspray, and fresh lilies. Serena picked up a tray of champagne glasses. Her hands, thankfully, were covered by white gloves. She took a deep breath and stepped into the hall. Her heart hammered somewhere in her throat, echoing in her ears with dull thuds. She walked through the crowd, navigating between people she had known for years. Here was the vice mayor's wife, with whom she had once discussed diets. Here was the bank director who had wished her happy birthday a year ago. Now they slid past her with indifferent glances, reaching out for glasses without pausing their conversations. Marvin was right. She was invisible. She looked for Brandon. He was standing in the center of the room by an ice sculpture. He was beaming. He wore a tuxedo. His bow tie was slightly crooked. He held a glass in one hand and gesticulated wildly with the other, telling a group of investors something. Beside him, like a faithful shadow, stood Vivienne Sinclair. The mother-in-law looked majestic in a long silver gown, stiff as a board, with a polite, frozen smile on her face. Serena gripped the tray so hard her fingers turned white beneath the fabric of the gloves. The children. They want to take the children. She had one chance. She began to approach slowly, offering drinks to guests along the way so as not to arouse suspicion. Champagne? For you. Step. Another step. Brandon laughed loudly. There are risks, of course, but who doesn't take risks doesn't drink this fine wine, he was preaching. My company is now going international. We're opening a European branch. You'll be opening a prison cell, Serena thought venomously. She reached their circle. Brandon was standing with his back to her. His jacket was unbuttoned. The side pockets protruded slightly. A perfect target. Serena approached from the side, tilting her head slightly. "Champagne, gentlemen," she murmured, trying to disguise her voice. One of the investors took a glass. Brandon turned around, not looking at her, and also reached for the tray. "Yes, hit me," he tossed out. At that moment, someone nudged Serena's elbow. The champagne in the glasses sloshed. It was the perfect moment of distraction. While Brandon looked at the moving liquid, Serena, using her left hand, concealed by the tray, slid toward his right pocket. One movement, light as a feather's touch. She felt the fabric of his expensive jacket. Her fingers opened. The bug slipped inside. Brandon didn't notice a thing. He gulped down half the glass and turned back to his conversation partners. "So about that," Serena exhaled. It worked. Now, she needed to leave, to dissolve into the crowd, exit through the kitchen, get into Marvin's car, and listen. Listen to him confess everything. She turned, trying not to run. Her step had to be measured, smooth. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto her forearm. The grip was hard, painful, like a vice. Serena froze. The blood drained from her face. She slowly turned her head. Vivienne Sinclair was looking at her. The mother-in-law wasn't looking into her eyes. She was looking down at Serena's feet. Beneath the black uniform slacks, her old, worn sneakers peered out, the very ones Serena had worn running through the snow, climbing through the ventilation shaft. Marvin had found her clothes, but he hadn't had time to find her size 6 shoes. Serena thought that no one would notice in the dim light of the hall. But Vivienne Sinclair always noticed shoes. "Shoes are a woman's face," she often used to say. Serena had worn these sneakers with the bright green stripe while gardening with her mother-in-law. Vivienne lifted her eyes. There was no surprise in them, only a cold, calculating glint. "What terrible service!" she said loudly, addressing the guests, but not letting go of Serena's arm. "This girl almost spilled wine on me. Come with me, dear. Let's step aside. I want to speak to your manager." "Mom, drop it." Brandon waved her off without turning around. "Don't ruin the evening." "I said I'll handle it." Vivienne cut him off. She dragged Serena away from the center of the hall toward the service corridor leading to the kitchen. Serena didn't resist. If she broke free and ran now, it would attract the security guard's attention. Brandon would see her. Everything would be lost. Vivienne shoved her into the narrow corridor, which smelled of food and dirty dishes, and pinned her against the wall. Waiters bustled around, but no one paid attention to the wealthy woman arguing with the help. "Have you completely lost your mind?" the mother-in-law hissed, ripping the mask off Serena's face. "To show up here, a wanted woman. I should call the police." Serena lifted her chin. The fear was gone. Only anger remained. "Go ahead. Let everyone see how the CEO's mother turns in her daughter-in-law." Vivienne Sinclair smirked. The mask of the society lady cracked. "Stupid girl. If I wanted to turn you into the police, I would have done it at the apartment or right there in the hall." "Then what do you want?" Serena was wary. "The children," Vivienne simply replied. "You won't get them. Brandon is taking them to Switzerland. I know about the tickets. I know about the boarding school." Vivienne Sinclair's face twisted. The mask shattered. "That idiot!" she whispered with hatred. "He thinks he can dispose of my husband's blood like property. He wants to exile them to the Alps so they won't bother him while he parties with prostitutes on my money. I won't allow my grandchildren to grow up among strangers and forget their own language." She stepped close to Serena. "Listen to me carefully, Serena. Brandon doesn't listen to me. He's tasted big money and become unmanageable. But I can stop the children from leaving. I have leverage with Child Protective Services. I have connections at the border. I can arrange for their passports to disappear right at the airport." "Then do it!" Serena exclaimed. "You're their grandmother." "I will do it, but on one condition." Vivienne Sinclair opened her small handbag and took out a sheet of paper folded into quarters. "What is this?" Serena asked. "Your confession. It states that you admit guilt for the embezzlement through Triumph Dynamics LLC, that you acted alone, without your husband's knowledge." Serena recoiled as if struck. "You want me to go to prison? For something I didn't do?" 5 years, Vivienne said calmly. "With a good lawyer, you'll be out in 3 on parole. I'll pay for the lawyer. I'll send you care packages. And most importantly, the children will stay with me. I'll file for temporary custody while you're away. They will live in my home, go to the best school here in the city. They'll be safe. And me? Serena's voice trembled. And you will save them from the boarding school and abandonment. Choose, Serena. Either you proudly refuse now, and Brandon takes them away forever the day after tomorrow, and you get caught and locked up for 10 years without any help. Or you sign this. You serve a short time, but you know your children are home, fed, and clothed. Vivian Sinclair tucked the paper into the pocket of Serena's apron. My son is a disappointment. He is weak. But you turned out to be stronger than I thought. But you're still a nobody. Sacrifice yourself if you are truly a mother. You have until morning. We meet at Ezra Vance's office at 9 o'clock. She turned and floated back into the hall, leaving Serena standing in the dirty corridor with the smell of other people's food and a choice that made her want to howl. Serena shoved the crumpled paper into her apron pocket. Her body was shaking, but her eyes remained dry. Fine, she said quietly, looking not at her mother-in-law, but at the wall behind her shoulder. I'll sign tomorrow at 9 a.m. at the lawyer's office, but I want to see that the children are safe before they take me to a cell. Smart girl. Vivian Sinclair gave a subtle smile with the corners of her lips. You made the right choice. You know Ezra's office address. Don't be late. The mother-in-law turned and sailed back into the glittering hall to the guests and the champagne, leaving Serena alone in the messy corridor. Serena waited a minute, tore off the apron, threw it into a laundry basket, and exited through the back door. Marvin was waiting for her outside. He sat in his car, parked in the shadow of the dumpsters, with headphones on his head. His face was grim, but his eyes glowed with predatory fire. Get in, he growled as soon as Serena opened the door. You won't believe what that fool is saying. Serena sank into the seat. Marvin handed her a second headphone. We've been recording for half an hour. He got drunk and drove off with some girl to the Peninsula Hotel. Listen. In the headphone, through the crackle of interference and the noise of the road, Brandon's voice cut through. He was drunk. His tongue was slightly slurred, but the intonations were familiar, smug, and authoritative. You don't understand, baby, Brandon was preaching. A woman's laugh and the clinking of glass could be heard. I'm a genius. I beat all of them. My wife to prison, my partner's screwed. What about your mother? The woman's voice asked. She'll kill you if she finds out you drained her accounts. Serena froze. Marvin hit pause and looked at her. Listen to the rest, he said. The recording continued. Mom, Brandon laughed. The old buzzard thinks she's the puppet master, that we're partners. She thinks I'm leaving her power of attorney to manage the assets here. Yeah, right. As soon as my plane crosses the border, I'm revoking all powers of attorney. She'll be left here to deal with the IRS and the creditors, and I'll be drinking mojitos in Zurich. Let her sit with her grandchildren in poverty if she loves them so much. I'm leaving her broke, just like she used to punish me when I was a kid. The recording cut off. Serena slowly removed the headphone. That's it, she whispered. That's the end. If Vivian hears this, she'll destroy him herself. She would forgive him for stealing, forgive him for framing his wife but betraying his mother? Never. Do we send it to her now? Marvin asked, his finger poised over his phone. No, Serena shook her head. Not by phone. She'll delete it and won't believe it. I need to see her eyes. Tomorrow, at the lawyer's office. That will be my ace. Instead of signing the confession, I'll let her listen to this. The night passed in a blur. Serena didn't sleep. She sat in Marvin's office, watching the clock, counting the minutes until dawn. At 8:50 a.m., she stood at the door of the lawyer's office. The sky was gray. A freezing rain was falling. Serena was wearing the same clothes as yesterday, jeans and a sweater Marvin had lent her. She gripped her phone. She walked into the office. Ezra Vance, the notary, sat at the table, shuffling papers. Vivian Sinclair sat in the client's chair, straight as a rod, in a severe black suit. She didn't even turn her head when Serena entered. You're punctual, the mother-in-law remarked, looking straight ahead. The documents are ready. Sign, and I'll call the lawyer. Ezra slid the sheet of paper towards Serena. A confession of guilt. Serena walked up to the table. She didn't take the pen. She took out her phone. "Before I sign anything, Vivian, you have to hear this." The mother-in-law finally turned to her. Irritation was in her gaze. "Serena, I don't have time for your theatrics." "This isn't theatrics. This is your son's voice. Yesterday's recording." Serena pressed play and placed the phone on the polished table right in front of Vivian. The volume was maxed out. Brandon's voice filled the silent office. "The old buzzard thinks she's the puppet master. She'll be left here to deal with the IRS and the creditors. I'm leaving her broke." Ezra paled and shrank into his chair. Vivian Sinclair listened. Her face remained motionless, like a mask of plaster. Not a muscle twitched when her beloved son called her a buzzard. She listened until the very end, until Brandon's drunken laugh. The silence after the recording was deafening. Serena exhaled. Victory. Now, Vivian would tear up the deal with her son. Now, she would give the children to Serena to get revenge on Brandon. "Did you hear?" Serena asked quietly. "He betrayed you. He screwed you over. Don't lock me up. Help me stop him. We'll destroy him together." Vivian Sinclair slowly raised her hand. She picked up Serena's phone, looked at the screen, and pressed delete. Then she went into the recently deleted folder and cleared it. Serena watched, unable to move. A cold, more terrible than any winter freeze, gripped her body. "I know he's a snake." Vivian Sinclair's voice was calm, almost bored. She handed the phone back to Serena. "I gave birth to him. I raised him. I know he's greedy, unprincipled." She stood up and walked right up to Serena. There was an icy emptiness in her eyes. "But he is my snake, my blood, and he is the father of my grandchildren. And you were always a nobody to us, just an incubator. Did you think I would let you destroy my son's empire because he was drunk and rambling? I will deal with him myself, familially. But you will go down." Vivian Sinclair snapped her fingers. The door to the next room burst open. "Take her," she ordered. 2 police officers entered the office. There was no doubt on their faces. The warrant had been issued long ago. Ezra quickly hid the unsigned confession in his desk. It was no longer needed. "Ms. Hayes, you are under arrest," the officer stated, pulling out handcuffs. "Hands behind your back." Serena looked at her mother-in-law. Vivian was already turned away, fixing her makeup in a compact mirror, as if discarding a bothersome napkin into the trash. The metal of the handcuffs was cold on her wrists, but Serena barely felt it. Everything inside her was burned out. As they led her down the office corridor, past Vivian Sinclair's stony face, she didn't cry or beg for mercy. She had died the moment her mother-in-law deleted the recording. Now they were leading away not a person, but an empty shell. The ride in the police cruiser passed in complete silence. The barred window, the dirty floor, the smell of old tobacco. Then the gray corridors of the precinct, the clanging of bolts, and finally the interrogation room. The chair was bolted to the floor. The table was scratched by thousands of desperate nails. Serena sat down, placing her cuffed hands on her knees. She stared at the wall. Time stopped. She didn't know how long it had been. An hour? 2? The door opened. Serena slowly lifted her head, expecting to see the investigator, but Brandon walked in. He looked impeccable. No sign of yesterday's drinking. A fresh shirt, perfectly shaved, smelling of expensive cologne. He entered the room like the Lord of Life, glanced distastefully at the chair opposite her, and, deciding not to sit, remained standing, leaning on the table with his hands. "Well, CEO," he smirked, "how do you like your new office? A little cramped for the head of a $5 million firm, don't you think?" Serena remained silent. She had no strength to respond to his poison. "Mom sends her regards," Brandon continued, enjoying his triumph. "She's upset, of course. Says you tried to turn her against her beloved son. Stupid. Did you really think she'd choose you? You're expendable to her, just like you are to me." He pulled a folded sheet of paper and a pen from his inside jacket pocket and smoothed the paper on the table in front of her. "This is the same confession you didn't get to sign at the lawyer's office. Confession of guilt. Sign it." Why? Serena asked hoarsely. You've already won. I've been arrested. I need everything to be clean. Brandon leaned toward her face. The courts can drag on for years. Analyses, appeals. I don't need that. I need your full confession here and now so the case is closed in a single day, the assets are unfrozen, and I can fly out peacefully. And if you don't sign, then you rot in here. Brandon shrugged. And the children? Jackson and Chloe are flying out tomorrow. I'll fly later once I've settled the paperwork for your incarceration. They'll be met in Zurich by staff from the boarding school. You'll never see or hear from them again. I'll forbid all contact. They'll forget what you look like in a year. Serena flinched, but Brandon's voice turned soft, tempting. If you sign right now, I'll do you a favor. I'll let you go with the escort to the airport. You can see them before they leave. You can hug them. Tell them Mommy is going on a long business trip. You can even say goodbye like a human being. This was a low blow, the cruelest he was capable of. You're a monster, Serena whispered. I'm a businessman. Decide. The pen writes perfectly. Serena looked at the sheet. The letters blurred. I, Serena Hayes, hereby confess that I single-handedly developed the scheme of embezzlement. She had no choice. Marvin wouldn't help. There was no evidence. Viviane had betrayed her. Yvette was gone. If she didn't sign, she would lose her children forever, without even a goodbye. With trembling fingers, struggling to bend her cuffed hands, she took the pen. Brandon smiled. It was the smile of a winner watching his victim take a last breath before death. Serena brought the pen to the paper. The interrogation room door flew open with a bang, hitting the wall. Brandon snapped upright. Hey, who's there? I'm talking to a suspect. Get out! Standing in the doorway was Detective Major Reese. Serena remembered him, a sad, tired man with watchful eyes who had handled her booking. But now he looked different. There was no routine in his eyes. They burned with the zeal of a hound that had caught the scent. The conversation is over, Mr. Sinclair, Reese said harshly. He walked to the table, ignoring Brandon's outrage. You have no right. I'll complain to the prosecutor, my lawyer. Your lawyer is very busy right now, Reese interrupted. He's trying to explain why his signature is on the documents of a shell company. And you, Ms. Hayes, put the pen down. You have nothing to sign. Reese placed his official tablet on the table in front of Serena. Look! A video was playing on the screen. It wasn't a recording. A red live icon blinked in the corner. The picture was grainy, shot in the dim light. A cramped room filled with blinking cabinets. The hum of fans drowned out the voice, but Serena recognized it instantly. Yvette! She gasped. Yvette looked terrible. Dirty hair, dark circles under her eyes, bitten lips. She was sitting on the floor, surrounded by laptops, right in the server room of Apex Zenith Holdings. I repeat, Yvette was saying into the camera. Her voice was trembling but firm. My name is Yvette Marshall. I am Brandon Sinclair's secretary. I am in the company server room. I've been hiding here for 3 days because I feared for my life, but I'm not afraid anymore. Brandon went white. He lunged for the tablet, trying to grab it, but Reese intercepted his arm and forcibly sat him on the neighboring table. Sit. Watch the show. On the screen, Yvette continued. Right now, I am sending this stream to every corporate mailing list address, as well as to the offices of the District Attorney and the Federal Investigative Committee. On this screen, you see the transaction logs. She turned the camera toward a monitor. Here is the system login under the CEO's credentials. But the biometric data, the fingerprint and retinal scan, belong to Brandon Sinclair. He was logging into the system using his wife's name. Here are the addresses, here are the dates, and here is a video from the surveillance camera in his office that he forgot to wipe from the local drive. In it, you can see him practicing forging Serena's signature. Brandon sat, his mouth agape, his face turned the color of ash. She ran away, he whispered. She was supposed to run away. She's a smart girl, Reese said. She figured out your people would intercept her at the train station, so she hid where you would never look. Right under your nose, in the heart of your empire. At that moment, the phone in Brandon's pocket vibrated. a long, irritating sound. Then again, and again. Brandon slowly, as if in a trance, pulled out his smartphone. Notifications flashed on the screen, one after another. Banking apps. Operation declined. Account blocked. Attention, assets seized. Access to Triumph. Dynamics, LLC subsidiary accounts, restricted by order of the sole executive body. What? Brandon jabbed his finger at the screen. Why? Who blocked it? He lifted his eyes to Serena. There was pure animal horror in his gaze. You, he whispered. What? Serena didn't understand. Reese smirked, looking at Brandon. You tried so hard, Mr. Sinclair, the detective said. You painstakingly forged all the documents to appoint your wife as the CEO of the company through which you funneled the money. You made her legally responsible for every dollar. Reese leaned toward Brandon. But you forgot one detail. By law, only the CEO has the right to manage the accounts. When Yvette posted the data about the embezzlement, the bank's security system automatically froze all transactions until the identity of the CEO was confirmed. And since the CEO, according to all your forged papers, is Serena Hayes, Serena looked at her cuffed hands, then at Brandon. Then all the money you stole and transferred to the company's accounts is now under her full legal control, Reese finished. You locked your own millions in a safe and gave her the key. Brandon jumped up. He lunged for the door, forgetting about the detective, the police, everything. He had to run, to the airport, to the woods, anywhere, but two masked federal agents were already standing in the doorway. Brandon backed up, pressing his back against the wall, and slid down, covering his head with his hands. His phone fell to the floor. The last message glowed on the screen. Your flight to Zurich has been canceled due to payment issues. Brandon screamed so loudly that the whitewash seemed to dust down from the interrogation room ceiling. It wasn't the cry of a man, it was the shriek of a cornered animal, realizing the trap had closed. It was all her, he roared, pointing his finger toward the wall where he knew the detective's office was. It was my mother, Vivian Sinclair. She came up with the scheme. I was just the executor. She forced me. The two federal agents yanked him up. Brandon thrashed. His feet in expensive dress shoes slipped on the linoleum. The handcuffs snapped shut on his wrists with a dry, final sound. Detective Reese winced with distaste and nodded to the convoy. Take him to the holding area. Let him cool down while we process the paperwork. Serena was let out next, but she was no longer wearing handcuffs. Reese had removed them himself a minute ago. Chaos reigned in the precinct's spacious lobby, resembling a scene from a bad play. Vivian Sinclair had already been brought in. She sat on a wooden bench straight as a poker, clutching her handbag. Beside her, shaking uncontrollably, sat the lawyer, Ezra Vance. When the convoy dragged a struggling Brandon into the hall, mother and son's eyes met. You, Brandon gasped, trying to tear himself free from the agent's grasp. You sold me out. You wanted to take the children and turn me in. Vivian Sinclair slowly stood up. Her face, usually flawless, was now covered in red splotches. The Iron Lady mask had cracked, revealing a frightened, aging woman. Shut up, you idiot, she hissed, and her voice rose to a shriek. I was saving you! I was trying to pull the family out of the pit you dragged us into with your greed. Saving me, Brandon laughed, and the sound was more terrifying than his scream. You always hated me. You wanted power, Major! He turned to the officer at the desk. I want to make a statement. My mother, Vivian Sinclair, is the organizer of the criminal group. The black ledgers for 5 years are in the safe behind the painting at her house. She orchestrated the transfer of funds. I'll show you. Liar! Vivian shrieked, lunging at him. But a police officer intercepted her. You forged the signatures. You hooked up with that rat, Ezra. I only certified, the lawyer squeaked, pressing himself against the wall. They forced me. They threatened me. Serena stood in the doorway of the police station and watched. It felt like she was looking at a jar of spiders that someone had dropped a lit match into. The people who had instilled a sense of inferiority in her for years, who had looked at her like dirt beneath their feet, were now tearing each other's throats out, forgetting honor, family, and dignity. Reese walked up to her and handed her a file. "Ms. Hayes," his voice was respectful. "The show is over. Let's get to business." They returned to the quiet of the office. Reese placed a document on the table. "The situation is unique," he said, tapping the paper with his pen. "Legally, thanks to your husband's maneuvers, you are indeed the CEO of Triumph Dynamics LLC. The money, that $5 million, is in the company's accounts. It's currently frozen." Serena looked at the paper. Agreement to cooperate. "You have two paths," the detective continued. "First, we begin a long investigation. You are named as an accomplice. Then the court decides who is right and who is wrong. The money remains deadlocked. Second, you, as the CEO, sign an order right now for the voluntary return of all illegally obtained funds to the government treasury. Plus, you give a full deposition against Brandon Sinclair and Vivian Sinclair." "And then what?" Serena asked. "Then, criminal prosecution against you is immediately terminated due to a lack of criminal elements and in connection with active cooperation. You walk out of here as a witness, and your husband and mother-in-law go to federal prison on charges of embezzlement on a massive scale, money laundering, and filing a knowingly false report." Serena took the pen. She didn't hesitate for a second. That money was cursed. It was tainted by Brandon's lies and Vivian's venom. She didn't need a penny of that stolen wealth. She put down a sweeping signature, her real signature, not the one Brandon had practiced, but the one she had once used to sign her children's report cards. "I'm returning everything," she said firmly, "to the last dime." "The right decision." Reese nodded, taking the file. "You are free, Ms. Hayes, and good luck to you. You are a strong woman. I rarely meet your kind." Serena left the office. The hall was quieter now. Brandon and Vivian had been separated into different cells. Their screams died behind the heavy steel doors. The lawyer, Ezra, was sitting at a desk, writing a full confession with a trembling hand, dictated by a young lieutenant. Serena pushed the heavy front door of the precinct and stepped onto the street. Morning. A cold, gray Chicago morning. The air was frigid, smelling of snow and exhaust fumes. But to Serena, it was the sweetest smell in the world. The smell of freedom. By the sidewalk, right at the entrance, stood a massive black SUV. Not Brandon's, Marvin Coleman's. Marvin stood leaning against the hood, his jacket unzipped, smoking. Seeing Serena, he tossed the cigarette into the snow and, without a word, opened the back door of the car. Serena froze. Her heart skipped a beat. In the back seat, wrapped in blankets, sat Jackson and Chloe. They were asleep, pressed close to each other. Jackson's head rested on his sister's shoulder. He was clutching a toy robot. "Mommy!" Chloe opened her eyes, blinked, and then shrieked, reaching out her hands. "Mommy!" Serena rushed to the car, dropping to her knees right in the dirty snow on the asphalt, and pulled them close. Warm, alive, her babies. "Shh, shh," she whispered, kissing their heads, which smelled of children's shampoo. "I'm here. I'm with you. No one will ever separate us again." Jackson woke up, saw his mother, and, trying to be a man, sniffled, but immediately buried his face in her neck and cried. "You're not leaving?" he asked hoarsely. "Dad said you left forever." "Dad was wrong," Serena said, lifting her tear-filled eyes to him. "I'm not leaving. We're going to be together forever now." Marvin stood nearby, looking away at the gray facades of the buildings. His hard face softened. "I intercepted their convoy on the way out of the city," he said quietly, when Serena had calmed down and stood up. "My guys explained to the CPS workers that taking children to Switzerland without the mother's consent is international kidnapping. And once Brandon's accounts were frozen, CPS suddenly became very cooperative. They revoked your husband's order. The children are yours." Serena walked up to him. "Thank you," she said. I don't know how to repay you." Marvin smirked, pulling out a fresh pack of cigarettes. "You already did. You destroyed Sinclair. I waited 5 years for this. Seeing him dragged into a police car in handcuffs, that's worth more than any money." He held out a set of keys to her. "These are for your apartment. Brandon changed the locks, but I already put in new ones. Go live." "And the business?" He narrowed his eyes. "The company is decapitated now. The investors are panicking. They need someone who knows the whole operation from the inside, someone who will clean up the mess and not steal." Serena gripped the keys. She looked at the police station building, where her past life, her fears, and her tormentors remained. Then she looked at the children in the car. "I'll handle it," she said. 6 months later. Heels clicked confidently on the marble floor of the Apex Zenith Holdings Business Center. It was the same marble as 6 months ago, the same veins, the same cold luster. But now, Serena wasn't looking down, searching for stains. She was looking forward. She walked down the corridor where she had once hunched over, pushing a cart of dirty water. Now she wore a perfectly fitted graphite-colored business suit. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo. Employees walking toward her stopped and nodded respectfully. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes." "Hello, Ms. Hayes." She nodded back, polite but reserved. She remembered all of them. She remembered who turned away when she was washing the floors. She remembered who laughed. But she wasn't seeking revenge. She simply fired those who were incompetent and kept those who knew how to work. The cleanup was tough, but necessary. Serena stopped at the CEO's reception area. At the desk, where a tearful Yvette once sat, a pleasant-looking woman in her 20s, named Lena, was now concentrating on her keyboard. Yvette had quit a week after Brandon's arrest. She said she couldn't stand being in those walls. Serena had helped her with recommendations and paid for design courses. Yvette had started a new life, far from office intrigue. "Ms. Hayes," Lena, the new secretary, jumped up when she saw her boss. "You got a call, and a letter came." "Who called?" Serena walked to the desk, glancing through her daily planner. From the prison." Lena lowered her voice, glancing around self-consciously. "From the Women's Federal Correctional Institution, number 5. Serena froze. The hand turning the page stopped. "They asked me to pass on that the inmate, Vivian Sinclair, has filed a request for a visit. She's very insistent, says it's urgent, something about the children. She wants to wish your son a happy birthday, asks you to come, or at least take a call." Serena slowly closed the planner. A memory flashed before her eyes. The mother-in-law's living room, the smell of peppermint tea, the false concern, and the cold voice. "You're a nobody to us." Vivian had received 4 years. Brandon, 7. Both had tried to appeal, blaming each other, but the evidence provided by Yvette and Serena herself was ironclad. Vivian Sinclair was now sitting in a cell without servants, without porcelain teacups, without her power. And she wanted to regain a shred of control, wanted to remind them of herself, wanted to poison her grandchildren's lives, even from behind bars. Serena looked at the secretary. Her gaze was calm and clear. "Lena," she said in an even voice, "tell the prison administration that Ms. Serena Hayes does not know anyone by that name." "And what should I say about the visit?" the girl stammered. "Say that I am declining the request. I don't have time for prison visits." Serena smiled, not maliciously, but simply as a person who has finally finished a long, dirty job. "And tell them not to call again. I'm busy. We're opening a new branch, and I need to approve the budget." "Understood, Ms. Hayes." Serena turned and walked toward the massive oak door with the brass plate that read, CEO S. Hayes. She pushed the door open. The office was flooded with sunlight. Brandon's enormous, oppressive desk was gone. In its place stood a modern light desk of glass and pale wood. The heavy drapes had been removed. The windows were open. The office smelled not of leather and expensive cognac, but of fresh coffee and spring. On the desk was a photograph in a simple frame. She, Jackson, and Chloe on a picnic, laughing, with ice cream smeared across their faces. Serena walked to the window. The city lay before her, spread out like a map. the very city that had felt like a prison 6 months ago. Now it was her battleground and her home. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and sat in her chair. She turned on the monitor and opened her email. The work was just beginning, but now it was her work. And in this office, there would never be dirt again. She had cleaned everything out for good. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day. And now 2 of my most popular stories will pop up on the screen so you can choose what to watch next.